So I'll start off here. My name is Kirsten Bayer with Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be your moderator and technical support for today's session. So if you have any questions or need any technical support during the session, please feel free to reach out to me via the chat or via email, and I will put my email in the chat momentarily here. We are going to be discussing a customer-focused workforce system, human-centered design, and this is an introduction. We are going to ask that you put all questions in the chat, so therefore we can save them and have written documentation of them. If you do have questions or comments or concerns as the session is proceeding, please feel free to put those in the chat. We do have live closed captioning on for your accessibility, so feel free to turn that on as well. And this session is being recorded. And we will get the recording out to all of the registrants within 48 hours of today's session. So 48 business hours, I should say, so by Monday morning. And we also have access to the slide deck that the presenters have given us today, but we're going to push that out with the recording as well. So we can also stay present as Virginia Hamilton is presenting today. So I'm going to hand it off to Andy Lasasso, and he'll get us started with some introductions.
Hello and welcome. Thank you all for the gift of your time today. I think we've got a good one. Not that we don't usually, but we got a good one here. So this webinar will introduce a coaching cohort model that has been designed specifically to support the rollout of the new career planning policy and help the workforce development system to move towards a more human-centered approach to work. So whether you are an executive director at the local level or you're working the reception desk, there is something of value to take with us here as we work more towards a cultural change rather than just a simple training. And so this training will be organized as a cohort model. It'll be 7 weeks, local team-based in its implementation, and we will go through the human-centered design approach through Virginia's vision, through her model, and make that a part of what we offer in Illinois. For this session, as Kirsten did say, please do put your questions in the chat, even though we do have Laura Dahm, our resident expert on the policy from the Office of Employment and Training. We really want to make sure we're not detracting from what Virginia and her colleague Elisa are here to do today, and want to make sure we give them our utmost attention and respect. So those questions will be logged and responded to later as we move forward. So without further hesitation, I do want to introduce Virginia Hamilton and Elisa Euler. They have their own introductions in their slides, so I don't want to steal any thunder, but thank you all for being here today, and thank you for helping us kick off human-centered design.
Thank you, Andy. You said, I think we got a good one today. I feel like I'm a fish. My name is Virginia Hamilton, and I'm delighted to be here today with my colleague Elisa. We'll introduce ourselves really quickly and then dive into the content. I have been in workforce development since about 1847, or maybe a little bit later, but for my whole career. I started out literally as a frontline staff person in a state unemployment office here in California, where I'm based. I'm based in Berkeley, California. And I worked for the state of California's employment department for 17 years, doing everything from working in frontline capacity in field offices to running data systems to, at the end of my 17 years, running JTPA for the governor of California, which I can't see your faces, so I don't know if there's any white hair out there, but there might be a few of you that remember JTPA. It's about 4 programs back from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I've also had experience with local government. I founded and ran the California Workforce Association, which represents, it was 52 when I started in 1996. There are now 45 workforce boards in California. So I worked with local government and then had the real honor and pleasure of working for the Obama administration as the regional administrator for the West Coast. So my territory was Alaska down to Hawaii and the territories in the Pacific. And there I had responsibility for We owe unemployment insurance, youth build, migrant farm worker programs, and others. But while I was there along the way, I discovered human-centered design or design thinking. I'll use those terms interchangeably. And frankly, it changed not only my whole perspective on what we were doing at the Department of Labor, but I know this sounds dramatic, but it sort of changed my life. I have now spent, since I left the Department of Labor, my time as an independent consultant with often working with Elisa, who I'll introduce in a minute, and others in teaching human-centered design largely to government agencies, a couple of states. We're just finishing some work in Colorado, did some work in the state of Minnesota, and then many local workforce boards around the country. I'm a trained facilitator. Elisa and I started our facilitation journey many years ago together, and have the sort of unique combination of expertise in human-centered design and the workforce development world. So in other words, when someone says, we can't do that, it's, the law says we can't. I actually know enough to say, actually, we can, because the law doesn't really say that, or whatever the case may be. And I'm just, what's on my mind all the time. It's really, I've actually sort of dedicated my life work to it, which is how do we make permanent work for people who need it? And so what's on my mind is how do we help the workforce system reinvent and redesign? Some of our programs were designed in 1933. I think we can actually update them a little bit. And also what's on my mind, since I had dinner with my daughter last night, is how to keep her wedding under budget, because she has lots of really crazy ideas. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elisa.
Hey everybody, I'm Elisa Euler. I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm also an independent consultant. As Virginia said, we started our professional kind of facilitation mastery courses together way back in the day. I'm not saying which day. And my kind of passion is creating dynamic, interactive, and participatory spaces where people come together and are able to problem solve and be creative and innovative together. So I really enjoy working with Virginia, where we can do that relying on the techniques and frameworks and understandings that are embedded within human-centered design. I spent 20 years and still work in the humanitarian sector, many different countries, and always trying to find ways that the participants in those programs were much more at the center of the design of them, and have found that some of these tools and techniques have been very useful there. But I also work a lot in the domestic context with cities and counties and other public serving agencies around how to engage citizens in the design and implementation of those programs. So I'm glad to be here and always glad to work with Virginia. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
And she has a kid who goes up the tree all the time.
Also true. They were in it for 10 hours the other day and I almost called the fire department for that.
So I'm going to start with a story about MRIs. Storytelling is actually a huge part of design thinking. And this story involves a guy named Doug Dietz, who was one of the inventors of the MRI machine. And I'd love to have in the chat, just anybody who's willing, if you have gone through an MRI, if you've had an MRI, just write in the chat, what was the experience like? What did it feel like to get an MRI, to go through an MRI machine? I'll just let you wait. I'll wait for a second just to see what you have written in the chat. I'm sure there's somebody at least who's been through it. Noisy, claustrophobic, loud. Yeah, exactly. I felt like I was in a dryer drum. It's scary. Yeah. Oh, no big deal. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later, Lucas. You're a brave person. Uncomfortable. Yeah. So pretty much everybody most people have the experience of being scared as they're going through this MRI machine. And however, it's a miracle, really. It can help to detect disease. It's saved, hundreds of thousands of lives since its inception. And right at the very beginning, when this machine was installed in a hospital, Doug Dietz was in the room with the technician, and he was talking to her and really excited about it. And she said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave because I need to bring in the anesthetist, I can never say that word, anesthesiologist." And Doug kind of looked at her funny, and she said, "Well, in this particular room, this is where we work with children, and that 80% of the children that we work with have to be sedated before they go into the machine." And that really gave Doug pause. And it was very upsetting to him to think that he was causing all of this fear, not only with the children, but with their families. And he decided at that moment that he was going to try to figure out ways in which the experience of going through the machine could be better for children in particular. And he found the design firm, which we'll be referring to throughout these classes. It's called IDEO. It's an international design firm that would claim it invented human-centered design. It was really good at branding it. And he worked with families and with children to come up with a new way of creating a customer experience. And this is what he created, or the teams created. This happens to be a pirate ship. There are others that I'll show you one more in a minute. But it's not only that they put decals on the front of the MRI machine, which is really cheap, actually. They didn't redesign the machine. They just slapped some plastic decals on the front of it. But they created a whole experience. So when the child walked through the door, if it was a pirate ship, they would get a pirate hat and a sword. And from the receptionist, "Oh, I hear you're going to be a pirate today." And then they'd be taken back to the machine and they'd be told, just you're going to hear a lot of weird noises, and it might be other, ships trying to come get you, and you have to lie really, really still, and there's going to be some treasure at the end. And so with this pirate ship, here's another one that's a submarine that has a similar story. The idea is that although the machine is the same, the experience for the customer has been designed differently to create a better experience and, frankly, a better outcome. Saves money for the hospital, makes families feel happier and like they're part of something, and so on. So I love to use this story about the MRI machine because, to me, it captures this real spirit of design thinking, which is that you're not thinking about the machine and what all the steps are that you have to take. Of course, you have to take those steps. You're not thinking about all of the compliance that you have to deal with in terms of the FDA and regulations and forms you have to fill out. All that has to happen, but you're really, your attention has shifted from all that stuff that you have to do anyway to how can we make the customer feel better about the experience that they're going through. And I'm going to pause here for a minute and, oops, if I can, and ask, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, ask Kirsten, we're going to watch about a 4-minute video that's going to just give you a different take on human-centered design.
This door on the 10th floor of the Vox Media office that I hate so much. You ever get this door wrong?
Pretty regularly.
Have you seen people misuse it?
All the time, every day. Constantly. I hate this door.
Me too, Kelsey. But here's the thing. As soon as you start looking for confusing doors, they are everywhere.
It's push.
Why? I feel like Roman Mars would know about this.
This is 99% invisible. And those doors you hate are called Norman doors.
What's a Norman door?
Don Norman wrote the essential book about design. He is the Norman of the Norman door.
All right, and where is this guy?
You must go to San Diego.
Okay. Hi, Joe. Hey, I'm Don Norman. Gee, it's hard to describe what I am.
Well, he's been a professor of psychology, professor of cognitive science, professor of computer science, a vice president of advanced technology at Apple. But for our purposes,
I was spending a year in England. I got so frustrated with my inability to use the light switches and the water taps and the doors even, that I wrote this book. If I continually get a door wrong, is it my fault? No. In fact, if you continually get it wrong, is a good, but if other people continually get it wrong, good sign that it's a really bad door.
a Norman door is one where the design tells you to do the opposite of what you're actually supposed to do, or gives the wrong signal and needs a sign to correct it.
Why does it need an instruction manual? That is, why do you have to have a sign that says push or pull? Why not make it obvious?
It can be obvious if it's designed right.
There are a couple of really simple, basic principles of design, and one of them I'll call discoverability. When I look at something, I should be able to discover what operations I can do.
The principle applies to a whole lot more than doors.
And it's amazing with many of our computer systems today. You look at it, there's no way of knowing what's possible. Should I tap it once, or twice, or even triple tap? So discoverability, when it's not there, well, you don't know how to use something.
Another is feedback.
And so many times there's no feedback. You have no idea what happened or why it happened.
And these principles form the basis of how designers and engineers work today, commonly known as user or human-centered design.
I decided at one point the word user was a bit degrading. Why not call people people? And it's amazingly simple and amazingly seldom practiced. We call it iterative because it goes around in a circle. We go out and we observe what is happening today. We observe people doing the task. And from that, we say, oh, we have some ideas. Here's what we should perhaps propose to do.
Then you prototype your solution and test it.
Quite often, these are wrong at first. But each time we go around the circle, we do a better job of making the device until the point we're actually making something that really works.
And this process has spread all over the world.
And it turns out it's improving lives.
From better everyday things like the ones that Don wrote about,
To using the same process to solve huge problems in public health in developing countries.
water,
Sanitation,
farming.
lots more. So what'd be a better human-centered door?
An ideal door is one that as I walk up to it and walk through it, I'm not even aware that I had opened the door and shut it. So if you had a door which had a flat plate, what could you do? Nothing. The only thing you can do is push. See, you wouldn't need a sign. A flat plate, you push.
This kind of push bar with the piece sticking out on one side works well too, so you can see what side you're supposed to push on.
The vertical bars could go either way. A simple little hand thing, though, sort of indicates pull.
But we still have terrible, terrible doors in the world. So many of them.
There are lots of things in life that are fairly standardized, and therefore, whether I buy this house or not is not a function of whether it has good doors in it. And so, except for safety reasons, doors tend not to be improved.
But the tyranny of bad doors must end.
Thank you, Kirsten. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Got a little buggy on the words in the video not actually syncing up. But I love the two things that he said about good design. One is that things can be discovered easily, and the other is that you get feedback. And what I found over the years, and I've literally been to hundreds of American job centers across the United States, is that they're often neither of those things are there. It's hard to know where to go when you walk in. Oh, do I go over here, over here? There's all these different signs. And you generally, as a job seeker, there's so little feedback these days because of the way that we've now automated applications for jobs. People send out hundreds of resumes and get nothing back. And so both of these principles we'll be talking about over the course of these sessions. How do we work with within the constraints and all the regulations, just like with the MRI machine that has, healthcare has tons of processes and regulations and rules that they have to follow, that are frankly sometimes life and death. But we also have an opportunity in so many places along the way, just like Norman with the doors, to make our systems more customer focused. And my thesis, and I think it's being held up over the years now, is that if you understand what customers really need and you create better experiences for them, you're going to get better outcomes. So this particular slide is just to point out that we're going to be doing two things in parallel here with the cohorts. One is for you to understand and learn about the career planning policy that the state has, which allows some uniformity. Uniformity is the wrong word, some consistency across the state so that customers are having the same kinds of experiences. But we're also going to then look at all the touch points where staff and customers are interacting with each other and finding opportunities to improve those touch points for the experience of not only the customer, but also the staff. One of the things that I've learned over the years, I was so gung-ho about has to be customer experience. You can design a really good customer experience that's super elegant, but if the staff don't like it, it's just not going to work. There'll be workarounds, they won't do it, they'll figure out a way to get around it. So the human-centered design work that Elisa and I do focuses both on the interactions of staff and the interactions and partners and the interactions of staff with customers along the way. So I'm going to give you some examples and tell you a little bit about what human-centered design is. You got a little bit from Norm. I'll tell you a little bit more and give you some examples from the workforce system that we've been collecting now over the last 5 or 6 years or so. So there's different ways that you can think about approaching design thinking in the workforce system. Some of them are literally physical design. This is an image before and after in Spokane, Washington, of what looks like a really traditional government office to one where people walk in and feel, oh, this, excuse me, I'm getting over COVID, so I'm going to cough throughout this thing. Where people feel like they're respected and that it's professional. It's that sort of institutional body language of being, oh, this is just another government office, to, oh, here's a place where I can get some help. We can also change signage. Instead of saying absolutely no cell phones, you could say things like, and I've got to read this, getting that phone call telling you you've got the job is exciting. Please go into a huddle booth or step out of the lobby. So there are just ways you can phrase signage. There are ways you can phrase materials, forms, and signs that are more customer focused. We're going to look a lot at service design. How do we actually provide services? How do we write an IEP? How do we coach customers in ways that are customer focused? And then throughout that whole thing, really just focusing in on what is the experience of the customer, so that, and we'll get to this slide in a minute, my favorite phrase that I learned when I worked for about 1.5 years at the city of Detroit. How do we create spaces where people feel welcome, treated with dignity and respect, and like they belong? So we're going to spend some time on that. So what is human-centered design? As Don Norman said, it's an iterative process, but it starts first with people. Sometimes we start with technology. We need a new app. Sometimes we start with, in our case, when you look at this 3 circles, this Venn diagram, In the private sector, we're looking at whether a business is viable. In the government, we're looking at whether we're obeying, we're within the constraints and the spirit of the laws and regulations that we have. But we don't want to start with the laws and regulations, and we don't want to start with whether something is feasible. We want to start with whether something is desirable. And that little white triangle in the middle of the Venn diagram is the sweet spot where we can actually innovate and redesign our programs to work better for people. There are lots of different versions of this. I like this one because it's simple. There are essentially 5 stages of design thinking: empathizing with customers and learning, doing customer research, trying to understand what customers need and want; defining and redefining the problem. You can have a very beautiful design process on a problem that is the wrong one. So we spend a lot of time on problem solving and framing, ideating, fancy word for brainstorming, coming up with lots and lots of ideas, and then prototyping and testing, which is something that we typically don't do in government. We come up with an idea and it's a great solution and we're all excited and we just implement it everywhere, as opposed to doing some experiments and testing. And we'll talk a lot about that as well. We also use this super powerful question, which is now sort of part of my DNA. And that is, how might we? The word how implies that we're going to do something. We just have to figure out what. We're not saying can we, will we? We're saying how are we going to do it? The word might actually reduces commitment. We're not saying how can we, how will we, how should we? We're just saying how might we? Like, what are all the different ways we might do something? And the word we is a huge principle in design thinking, which is that we're doing something together as a team. It's radical inclusion of all of the different stakeholders and partners and customers and kinds of people who are working on a problem to get different perspectives from them. One of my favorite quotes, this is from one of the co-founders of Waze, the GPS app, which is fall in love with the problem, not the solution, and the rest will follow. This is really hard to do. Lisa and I have now taught together many cohorts of people who are, they've got ideas. They come into the class and want, they've been thinking about something for a long time and they've got their solutions. We get rewarded for coming up with great solutions. I was talking to my daughter last night. She said, her boss tells her, don't come to me with a problem, only come to me with solutions. And I'm going to bust that motto and say, come to me with a whole bunch of different kinds of problems that are all focused on the same topic. Then we'll start talking about solutions. So here's kind of the process. Start by building empathy with your customers. There are lots of different ways to do that. I'm going to talk about a couple here. One is starting with extreme users. When you start with extreme users, we design for everyone. So for example, people in the disability community who were wheelchair users advocated for curb cuts in cities. And those curb cuts helped people in wheelchairs, but they also helped parents and people with strollers and people with roller bags and people with shopping carts and all sorts of other ways in which that curb cut helped. So starting with extreme users is one of the principles that we use. But we also, and we do lots of empathy interviews and ask people lots of questions, but we also observe. IDEO tells a great story. They were designing a pillbox or pill bottle, new kind, and they asked an extreme user, she was 85 years old, she had arthritis in her hands, what her experience was with pill bottles. And she said, oh, it's no problem, easy. And they thought that was peculiar. And so they asked if they could follow her around. So they really were engaging in observation. And she went home from the pharmacy and went into her kitchen where she had a deli meat slicer, and she sliced the top of the pill bottle off and poured her pills into baby food jars. So, so there's super value in asking people questions, and there's also value in just observing and listening and being a fly on the wall. So this is an interview that was done when I first started doing design thinking with a young man named David. And this was part of the transcript of the interview, but I love the notion here that, and you'll have these slides later, you can go back and look at them, but he says 3 different times in 3 different ways, I don't feel right asking too much of this guy named Frank, or I feel uncomfortable asking for help, or you got to do it yourself. You can't ask too much for help. Those are really strong signals that we need to design, for him at least, and probably other young people, ways in which we can offer help without them having to ask for it. So it's our empathy interviews start to give us clues about how we can design for our customers. Another way we can do customer research is to do journey maps. The one on the left is from San Diego, and they plotted the entire journey of a customer from the time they walked through the door till the time they got a job. They also looked at the timing, because one of the problems that they had was that people would come in the door, they would start the process and they'd get up and leave. Like a lot of them would just get up and leave. And what they discovered was that as they did this journey map, that they were doing the W-9, like right to work documentation. That was like about 15 minutes, or I can't remember. It was an hour and 15 minutes to register into the state job system. And then if there was an orientation, that was another 45 minutes. And it just was too much. We'll talk much more later about sort of information overload, but people would just leave. So journey maps can help give us insights like that. They can also give us insights like the other one, which is a friend of mine who was redesigning a youth program. And he had his staff draw, and then I got it printed up to look nice, what the staff thought the journey was for a young person from the time they first heard about the program to the time they were actually enrolled in the program. And then they asked young people to come in and mark up these charts where it was wrong for them, like that wasn't their experience, or it was a pain point. In other words, it really didn't work for them, or it just was an opportunity to improve something, to make it better. So journey maps are a really great way we can do customer research and learn more about what our customers need. One more, I think this is the last one. This was done in Detroit. And we love when we're doing journey maps, not only to look at the actual touch points and milestones along the way, but also what people are thinking and feeling. This was a real person who said, why am I filling out an online application if I fill out another one when I get into the office? And why are they sending me assembly line job postings when I'm clearly not interested in assembly line work? So diving into not only what people are thinking, but what they're feeling is an important part of the customer research. So when we start thinking about doing customer research and interviewing customers, there's some tips that we'll go into in greater detail in the cohorts, but asking open-ended questions, as why didn't you like that, is not a great way to ask a question. Tell me about your experience, open-ended. Ask about a specific event in the past. So tell me about the first time you came into the Career Center. What was that experience like for you? What was the day like? Was it sunny? Was it raining? Where did you have to park your car, or did you take a bus? What was the worst thing that happened? So very specific events in the past can help build insight. Avoid leading or loaded questions. I just talked about that. We don't want to assume that someone had a good experience or a bad. We want to know what their experience was more generally. We want to give people room in between questions. So often we want to fill empty space, and sometimes the best and most juiciest answers come from the time we give people to think. If I ask a question about something that is really important to someone, giving them a chance to actually be silent and just think about it. I've never asked someone a question and sat for an hour with them never answering. They will always answer, but you have to learn how to be patient and give room between questions. Repeating key words is really helpful sometimes, just to express that you're listening. Elisa says, I really love to bicycle ride. And then, so I might say, wow, bicycle riding is, something you really love. And then using inclusive language and making sure that we're always thinking about access and populations. And there's a whole bunch of work that we're going to do about inclusivity and access. So this is an example of an empathy map canvas. It's a tool that can be used when you're doing an empathy interview so that you're not only listening to what people are saying, but also looking at, kind of how they're feeling. Are they sitting back like this? Are they, super excited and, up front and listening? And thinking about what, kind of listening for the background, for the emotion, for what people are feeling. And the way that we teach this class is very interactive with lots and lots of small groups and breakouts and ways to learn actually how to do something and build your confidence in it. And so guess what? Right now, we're going to practice doing an empathy interview. And we're going to break you into pairs, and you're going to go into a Zoom breakout room, and you're going to help to redesign an experience for your partner. And I'll tell you how you're going to do it. We're going to focus on birthdays. My birthday's coming up in 2 weeks. And last night, my daughter said, so what do you want to do for your birthday? And you know what? That's not very common. Often people just plan birthdays for you without even thinking about what the birthday person might actually want. And so in your pair, the person who has the first name closest to the A will start by playing the role of the customer, and the other person will be the designer. And in pairs, you're going to conduct a short empathy interview, and you each have a turn being the customer and the interviewer. And your goal is just to practice building empathy. You want to practice digging for stories. Tell me about a time when connecting with emotions, digging for stories. So the interviews are going to be 5 minutes each. We'll give you a signal through the Zoom, on the Zoom window, which they come and go quickly. So interviewer, you might be paying attention to that. Set a timer. I'm sure you all have a phone or some way that you can set a timer for 5 minutes each. And the first designer is going to conduct a 5-minute interview with the customer about their best birthday celebration ever. And remember, what you're trying to do is you're trying to design for the best birthday this person is ever going to celebrate in their whole life. So even if they tell you about all sorts of wonderful things, you want to figure out, how can I delight this person even more? Or if someone tells you a story about a horrible birthday experience they have, you can use that to think about how to do it better. So great questions. What was your favorite birthday? Or remember a time when you were disappointed about your birthday? Tell me what happened. And then pay attention to what your customers feeling, thinking, saying, doing. And then after 5 minutes are over, you're going to switch roles, and the customer is going to be the designer will be the customer. And then you'll have a little bit of time to debrief at the end with each other about just what was that like. So the total time in the breakout room is going to be 15 minutes, which will give you sufficient time to sort of maybe get your thoughts together. If you're the designer first, or each of you, maybe just write down a couple questions you might ask when it's your turn, and then start the clock. 5 minutes for interview 1, 5 minutes for interview 2, little time to talk to each other, and then we'll bring you back to the large group and talk about it for a few minutes. So
and a few of the rooms, if you end up in there and after a minute nobody's there, just come back to the main room. We'll put you in with another pair, because some folks are jumping in and out. But we've got pairs all lined up for 15 minutes now. And Virginia, we're ready to go. I'll send them off.
all right, have fun. Welcome back. I always love it when people come back from breakout rooms. Nice to see some faces also. Much nicer to do a training session with people's faces instead of black boxes. Although I have to show you this, that, you know, I've been training in Zoom for so long that I trained in person recently, and I actually created my own Zoom box that I brought with me to the training session in person, just, you know, in order to encourage people to participate.
And that, my friends, is the sense of humor that you will experience during this training.
Yeah, really bad jokes. So I'd love to hear from y'all. What was that like for you? So as you were listening as a designer and asking questions, what did it feel like to try to understand your customer's point of view? And or as a customer, how did it make you feel to be interviewed about something that maybe some of you cared about? So just write in the chat. We should have chat music here. I don't know. But I'll give y'all, you know, a minute just to write in the chat. How did it make you feel? We're going for feelings here. What is it like? One of the things that I've certainly learned over the years is that people are really longing to be heard. Our customers in particular, you know, the bravery that it takes to come into our system in the first place. People want to have their voices heard and their stories heard. Great, excited to share. I could relate to her. Great. As a designer is tricky. I tried to think of questions where I could get as much information as possible, but it was also to give out so much information. The worst birthday experience ever, yeah. Commonalities between us, right, exactly. One of the things you want to do in empathy interviews is build rapport. Awesome. Weird at the beginning, you didn't know each other. People like talking about themselves, it's true. Your experiences, once they begin, they gush. That's great. Yeah, I did this exercise once. We both like cake. I did this experience once. I was training with a whole bunch of people. There were about 100 people in the room, and they were in groups of 3 and 4, and they're practicing empathy interviews. And one of the groups, there was a woman who's crying, and I tried to go over and see if everything was okay, and they kind of pushed me away. And later I asked what was going on, and she said, one of the women at the table said, you know, it was this woman's birthday a couple weeks ago, and her family just kind of ignored it, didn't really do what she would want, never asked her a question about, you know, what she would like. And they actually they did a prototype and designed a new birthday experience for this woman. And she was so touched that they listened to her, and they actually really understood her, what she was feeling and thinking, that it made her cry. She was so touched, even in a practice interview. So one of the many reasons that I really love design thinking is that we get to be our human selves, and bring our whole selves to the work that we're doing. So we've just been practicing some different ways of collecting information. I told you about empathy interviewing, you had practice. I told you about doing journey maps and observing people. And once we've collected a bunch of customer research, then we want to develop some insights. So the insight I talked about earlier with David was, we need to figure out a way to provide help for young people in a way that they don't have to ask for help. This was my first project that I did when I was at the US Department of Labor. And we were working to try to understand how to best serve the long-term unemployed. And one of the insights that we came up with after interviewing a lot of people who are long-term unemployed was that their emotional states really mattered when they walked in the door. that if you're about to lose your house or your apartment or your car, you're terrified. You're panicked. You don't even really need a job. You actually need money. And that's really, really different than someone who's sent out 100 resumes online and hasn't heard back from anybody, and they're just kind of stalled and don't know what to do. And they're really different from people whose maybe their occupation, their industry has gone away, but they weren't that interested in the first place. And they really just are exploring and don't know what to do next. And so as a result of having this insight about emotional states mattering, we actually, well, at first I was just going to create a checklist to hand out to people. And then I realized that handing this out to someone and saying, are you feeling panicked or discouraged, was not the right approach. But the case managers used this. They had it by their desk, not facing the client, but just to remind themselves that when people come in, you need to pay attention to their emotional state, as well as just all the paperwork and answers to questions that they need to give you for to get them enrolled into a program or something. So once you have some insights about your customers, you may totally change your problem statement. You may totally change the problem that you thought you were out to design, and so you'll change it. And at that point, you're going to come up with lots and lots of ideas. In person, we use lots and lots of sticky notes. We'll talk a little bit later about the platform that we use when we do remote training, which is called Miro, but it's coming up with lots and lots and lots of ideas. There's a lot of data. I don't know, like Einstein came up, Edison came up with, I don't know what, like 187 versions of the light before he found one that actually worked. So lots and lots of ideas into the space. And here's some examples. This was actually some work I did with, as I said, I worked with the city of Detroit, their workforce boards, their workforce centers, there were 9 of them. And that how might we welcome new customers in the career center so they feel valued, respected, and they belong. One idea they had was to create a know before you go app for customers to make sure that they knew what were all the documents they needed to have, what was the closest location, when was orientation, and all that kind of thing. So we use How Might We's to come up with lots and lots of different solutions that we can then prototype and test. At the same time that we're learning a lot about our customers and doing customer research, what I've also learned over the years that I've been doing this work is that there is a whole field called behavioral economics, behavioral science, behavioral design. But we know that people behave irrationally, but they behave irrationally in predictable ways. And we don't need to do customer research, for example, to understand that people have information overload. My favorite example of this for the workforce world, some of you may be guilty of it. I have been in the past, I have to admit. Orientations for customers that have a slide that says, on July 14th, 2014, President Barack Obama signed the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, otherwise known as WIOA. No one needs to know that. No one needs to know that ever again. But we just think we need to give our customers everything. We've got 14 mandated partners. Like, your customers don't care that you have 14 mandated partners. You care because you want to work with them and you want to figure out what the right services are for your customers. But we overload our customers with so much information that they just don't, they can't take it in. And in the cohort that we're going to do, we'll talk quite a bit more about behavioral science and how you can use some of the insights from behavioral science to help you come up with some new ideas on how to improve customer experience. And then once you have something you want to experiment with, you want to create a prototype. Again, this is Detroit. They decided that one of the things that was a problem for them was they put their least trained staff, the least experienced staff, up at the front counter. And when people came in, the people who worked at the front desk really didn't have all the information they needed in order to help new customers coming in. And so they came up with the idea of creating what they called a Welcome Team Academy, which is a year-long training program for people who are on the front desk from all the 9 different career centers. And they didn't come up with this idea and then just start going out and building curriculum and finding teachers and getting rooms and, actually starting to do it. They first started by literally creating a Word document that said, this is the curriculum, and then asking people who worked on the front desk and asking front desk managers, would you go to this training? What do you like about this? What do you not like about it? So we're experimenting. We're starting by just learning first where the risk is low and it doesn't really cost very much before we actually start implementing. This is another one of my favorites. It's just, this was some prototyping that was done many years ago, and one of the first design thinking challenges that we had when I was at DOL, they actually prototyped all their partner relationships and discovered as they finished their prototype that what they had built was a group of soldiers that were shooting at each other and trying to knock each other down. And they realized that through this prototype that they had just discovered that they were really competing with each other over employers, and that they wanted to create a different way of working with employers that looks more like this train over here on the other side where people are all walking in the same direction. This is another one of my favorite prototypes. Before you start doing a new orientation video and filming and getting all the slides together, literally this guy just put up a piece of paper that was like a video screen and read a script, and then people reacted to it and said, I wouldn't put that there, that's too long here, maybe we need to chunk this out. But seriously, it was just that simple. We love scrappy and rough prototypes. They really help us learn before we go into implementation. And then we test. This was work done I did up in Oregon, where the first thing that people saw when they walked in the door was a red stop sign. Not very welcoming. And so we just experimented with we took construction paper and, different messages. Wait, you're up next with a smiley face, or hi, welcome, serve you in a minute, or, whatever it is. We tested a bunch of different ones. And after a couple of weeks, the people at the reception desk said there was actually a difference in the attitudes of people who walked up to the front desk than they were when the red stop sign was there, because it felt different. And this is a slide I keep coming back to over and over again that I think is really at the heart of what we're trying to do here, which is that customers don't want a product, a workshop, an orientation, a warm handoff, a program. They want to make their lives better. And they're coming to us in the workforce system to get help in making their lives better. And it's I believe, our responsibility to make it as easy and respectful as possible for them to make their lives better through the way we interact with them. And that's really what this is all about, figuring out new ways that we can design our services, our physical location, the way we do things. Some of you may have the experience of going into a doctor's office and having the doctor asking questions, but sitting over here and typing in their computer and never looking at you in their eyes ever. Sometimes that happens in career centers also. So we're gonna shake up a lot of different ideas about how this work can be done, because there is no neutral design. Everything that we do has been designed. Sometimes it's by default. Sometimes it's like Fred, who worked in our office 25 years ago and had a really great idea for a checklist, and we're still using that checklist, even though Fred is gone, Fred died. We're still using some of the same systems. We still are using some of the ways we designed programs literally when FDR was president, literally when Lyndon Johnson was president. there's so much opportunity to update in ways that doesn't cost a lot of money and doesn't really take much time. It's just having what we're hoping to do, which is to give people space to step back and be able to look at what's there and think about different ways of doing it. I love this quote from Antoinette Carroll. She's the founder of the Creative Reaction Lab, and she said, "All systems, including systems of oppression, inequality, and inequity, are by design, and therefore they can be redesigned," which is the hope. So I'm going to turn this over to Elisa, who's going to talk about the offering that we have, that we've worked with our colleagues, Amy and Andy and Lisa at the state, to bring you through a process that will complement and go along with the customer policy that's being rolled out. So Elisa.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. So I'll just to say that this may be information you already know, but the structure is that we intend to have 3 cohorts that would be together going on a learning journey through this human-centered design process. In each cohort, there will be teams. And we use a team-based approach because we are inviting you to apply as you learn the human-centered design process. So everything that Virginia just walked you through, you will take on together with your teammates in relationship to a problem or dilemma that you would like to design effective innovations and solutions for. So that happens over the course of 7 days. And those 7 days are chunked, 3 days, 3 days, and then a final capstone event where your team's work is shared out and you are able to sort of celebrate your efforts together. So the structure is laid out here on the slide. The exact dates are laid out here on the slide for the first cohort. And this is where we will give you the chance to just look at the framing of each of these sets of days. So in that first chunk of 3 days, you're really looking at, together with your teammates, the problem that you want to tackle and deeply understanding it, marinating it, falling in love with that particular problem. And by the end of that first 3 days, you will be set up to do the customer research that you need to really invite in that human perspective in your understanding. And then you will have time in between the first set of days and the next to conduct that customer research. And when you come back, your team will present your findings, the insights learned, and how that shapes your thinking, and move on through the process of anchoring in that how might we question, brainstorming solutions, building out your prototypes, and making a plan for testing the prototype as in between that second set of 3 days and the final capstone event. And at that final capstone event, that's when you'll report back the work that your team did on testing and share the lessons learned that you came through together. So we are very much taking an applied learning approach throughout. And each of the days is designed to be extremely interactive. It's spending as much time in group work, if not more, as it is in whole group plenary conversations. This session today was more lecture than you'll likely get in any of those future sessions. It was really meant to be a big picture overview. In our time together as a cohort, it's much more an introduction of key concepts and then working together in small groups, either as a team or in mixed groups, so that you are able to benefit from this rare opportunity to interact with colleagues from around the state. So you'll have lots of opportunities to do both of those things. The mornings on each of these days will be content forward. So you'll be spending a lot of time engaging with new ideas, new frameworks, and working them through in small groups. The afternoons will be working time. So you'll have a chance in those afternoon sessions to really get together with your team and put into practice the concepts that you learned and create that product that is being set up for that day. So all of this is structured in a way so that the first cohort, members of that first cohort, should you choose to pursue sort of ongoing learning and want to be a resource in this practice, you might then choose to join future cohorts as someone who's a trainer in training. So that's a whole nother level that we'll say more about at a later date. But just wanted, anything you would add there, Virginia, in terms of the structure of the time before I move into a little bit about the platform?
No, only to say though that although Andy and Amy were really excited and wanted as many people as possible to go through this as possible, we would prefer teams of 5 or 6 rather than 7. Just again, our idea is always that we want everyone to participate. And when you have a group of 7 people, people kind of fade away, or they don't, there's not work for everybody to do. So 5 or 6 people is for us preferable. Although if you have 7 fabulous people, we're not going to kick somebody out.
Yeah, we'll take them. So today we spent our time in screen sharing on slides. Because the sessions in the future are going to be so interactive, we'll actually move to a different platform. I don't know how many of you might be familiar with a platform called Miro. It's an infinite whiteboard space, and it really allows us to have working areas together so that at any given time, we're all in the same visual space, and group 1 might be working over here, and 2 over here, and 3 over here, but we can all see each other's work all the time, and it invites that interaction and co-creation that happens throughout the training time. So these are some images just as examples of the way that our projects get laid out in the boards. And we use as much as possible kind of this interactive venue to be really dynamic. We use, paper and pens at some point. We use the Miro board at some point. We put you in the breakout rooms a lot. So just want to give you an image of what that might look like. And we do very much invite your feedback throughout. So we know that these virtual spaces are new to some of us. We work a lot to build comfort. And we also know that the content is new to some, and we work a lot to adapt our approach to make sure it delivers in a way that's really able to be used. So every session we ask for feedback, we take that feedback to adjust our approach going forward. I will say that if anybody is new to Miro, or even if you're not new to Miro, you use it a lot, I would very much encourage those of you who join us to come to a tech session in advance, which we will schedule for each cohort, where you are just learning the platform, because being comfortable on the platform is going to ease you into the content significantly. So we will have an opportunity for each cohort to come to a skills-based interactive, like what do you do to get your sticky onto the board and write into it, et cetera, to build that in advance of the actual content training. And we'll let folks know more about that as we move forward. So Virginia, anything else you would add here before we start to close?
I'm going to end with this slide, and then if there are some questions, happy to take any of those. The notion here is that just like with the MRI machine, there are many things that need to go right technically, that need to be complied with, and processes that need to work smoothly for staff and for customers. And so we will, along the way, be using the policy that's been developed by the state as sort of our infrastructure. But what we're really going to do at those touch points with customers, where you're talking to customers or listening to them, working with them, is we're gonna swap the mindset from the traditional problem solving approach, which is, oh, we got a problem, let's see, anybody have any ideas? Oh, I have a good idea, why don't we do this? And then we go do it, and then eventually it sort of hits the customer, to the opposite, which is starting by understanding stakeholders and learning new things about them, and then developing concepts and building models out from that. So it'll be this nice interactive relationship between the policy and you being able to contribute your own ideas to new and better ways of giving customers a great customer experience and improving their outcomes. So I'd love to open it back up. You feel free to to go off mute if you'd like, or to write in the chat any questions you may have. I'm going to stop sharing here. We will make these slides, or Amy and Andy will make these slides available to you so you can come back and look at them. Any questions or comments or confusion or?
I had some questions come directly to me. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
I think they just accidentally only sent them to me in the chat, but somebody asked, are you wanting us to apply as a team or are we placed onto a team?
My understanding, and Andy, you might be able to answer this better, is that we want you to apply as a team.
Correct. And, we'll keep a list if we can form a team, if there's, I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of interest in this. I think this is something that we in Illinois have wanted for a long time. So on the off chance we don't have enough teams, I think we can then look at individuals in a simple one. But
Yeah.
my guess is we're probably going to have teams.
I would also just want to say, by the way, that not only in the state of Illinois has the governor just, has a, Andy, you know more about this than I do, but there's a whole redesign process going on sort of at the state level around being more human-centered in the workforce system. And the president of the United States recently issued an executive order requiring all federal agencies to use design thinking and human-centered design and other techniques and methods and tools to get the federal agencies closer to the users and creating feedback loops so that we're designing for and with our customers. So this is not just Virginia crackpot, like, getting super excited about teaching this, although that probably is an accurate statement, but this is also that this is a movement that's happening in government everywhere. And we're seeing just remarkable results in terms of better government services for the people who need it.
And Virginia, I'll point you to Felicia Nixon's comment or question. Can you relate her question back to, or tie it back to the projects that the teams will do?
Yeah, I would imagine this would start with understanding and laying out what the stakeholders need from a human-centered design mindset, going back to our workplaces to start thinking, observing. Absolutely. The other thing that we will likely do, which we've done, we just finished doing in Colorado, is we will send out a survey to all the people who've signed up for the cohort to prioritize some of the common issues that we've seen with AJCs and workforce boards. And so that when we put you in teams, we've been successful so far. You'll get to work on a topic that's in the top 3 of what you're interested in. So teams won't randomly be assigned various different topics to work on. We try to make sure that a team works on something that they care about. Actually, it's an important part of design thinking, which is, do you care about this in the first place? Otherwise it's just sort of an exercise. So, but yeah, I mean, you are all, I would imagine, one way or another associated with the workforce system, the current workforce system, and you probably already have observations and ideas about things that don't work or things that could work better. And that's all fodder for this project.
Though it is fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Virginia and Andy, that the work that this cohort will take on will also be around how to innovate in relationship to this policy.
Yeah,
so we'll
exactly.
focus on the policy elements that are alongside this rollout.
Yeah. The other thing that we didn't say, I just want to say, is that we would love to do some of this in person, but COVID, we just don't know. So the first cohort that we do is going to be completely remote. And we've had lots of great success with remote training now. We've figured it out. Actually, Elisa's figured it out over the last couple of years. But it might be that cohort number 2 will be a hybrid. So we might come to Illinois for a couple of days, do the first couple of days of training, and then do the rest remote, or come back for the capstone, so we're all together in a room together. We're just going to work with the state and make sure we're doing what's safe and right. Question, can we have people on the team that are not on this call? Absolutely. We love diverse groups of people coming together as a team. Does every member of the team need to attend every session? As a teacher, my short answer is yes, of course they do. Because every session is designed to be rich and full of information and things that you need. And I will say, you know, of course, stuff happens. I mean, someone's kid's sick or, you know, whatever. I mean, things happen, but the reason that we're giving you the schedule with all the detail on it right now is so that if you're interested in participating, you can clear your schedules to the extent that is possible for you. And because this is training that really builds on each other, you can't miss the first 2 sessions and then come in and have any idea about what's going on. It's really building. And it does get to the point where about halfway through the class, people go, oh, it's all coming together. I get it now. Like it's a process that builds and builds and builds until the final prototype. And honestly, we hope that the final prototypes that the teams come up with are both helpful in terms of demonstrating knowledge and confidence of the processes and methods along the way, but also might be things that you could implement in real life later on. Other questions? As you can tell, we love doing this. This is my favorite thing to do in the whole world, is to teach design thinking to workforce professionals. I know that's really geeky and nerdy, but it is. So we want to have fun along the way. Can we put the schedule back up? Yep. And you'll also get this.
And again, this is the schedule for the first cohort.
Yeah, there's 2 more cohorts after this.
There you go.
That will start in April, and they'll go all the way through June.
But those of you who have even a passing interest in potentially being a resource, a trainer of this in the future, you will likely want to be part of the first cohort to be able to really use the second and third cohort to advance your skills.
All right, we're 3 minutes away. No one's ever complained that they got 3 minutes back on their schedule. Andy, do you want to?
Yes, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and close it up. Virginia, Lisa, thank you so much. I think this was absolutely fantastic. I've already started to get some feedback on the hotline here, so we are all good. I will circle back around with our friends at ICSPS and start getting the materials out, so we start organizing our cohorts and getting the ball moving forward.
And Andy, do you have a deadline for when you'd like the applications for the first cohort?
I do not, but I'm going to go ahead and go with ASAP, because I think we're going to have a lot of interest just based on, I got both bat phones blowing up right now. So I think we're in a good place, and thank you. And we look forward to really getting into this and you know, through your expertise, you know, helping be better for our customers, for the consumers. So I think we're on a good path here. So thank you very much. For everyone else, thank you for attending. And like I said at the beginning, thank you for the gift of your time. I hope that you found interest in this, and I hope that you'll join us in a cohort application. If you are a lone individual, please don't let that stop you. I will work with Amy to start a side list if we need to assemble teams. So thank you all so much. Again, Kirsten and the team at ICSPS will get the recording as well as the slide deck out probably on Monday. And we'll also get the cohort application out as well. So thank you all so much. Have a great day. Stay warm.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, stay warm.